I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone.
Welcome to the Hormone Genius Podcast. I'm here with Jamie, and we have got our circadian rhythm gal with us. Tiffany Cagwin is back, and we are so excited because we're going to talk about all things balance in your body in relationship to the seasons. And this is really, I think, important right now. I don't know about you guys, but I meet a lot of people who are sad in the winter. And right now it's kind of mid-January when this releases. It might be later, but as of now, what I notice is people start to really kind of suffer from the effects of the change of seasons. And Tiffany's an expert in this, and she has done a deep dive into the relationship of a lot of hormones, talking about melatonin. She's going to give us a lot of information to empower us to really help, really create a balance to the seasons. And I think this is just so important and so intuitive to holistic health. And that's what Tiffany is, holistic health coach and quantum biology practitioner. So Tiffany, thanks for being with us today. And I'm just going to jump into the first question. How do we prevent getting sad when it gets cold, at least, the change of the season to winter? And what is our best techniques to really get out of that kind of like, oh, here it comes?
Yes. Hi, thank you for having me back. I'm so excited to be here. And that's a great first question because you're right. And I'll be honest, I spent the majority of my life up until this point also getting sad in winter. And it's so liberating to have this understanding of the different shift of embracing the season. So I'm going to start with that, which is, it is a mindset shift initially. It does require the willingness to honor the seasons and see the gifts that each one offers. Summer's amazing. Summer's great. We all love spring and summer, but winter is deep healing, deep reset, deep permission to just recalibrate. Our hormones want to do it. Our biology is set up that way, and nature shows it. The trees, they go into hibernation as well, and we need to honor that. So I think the first step is just saying, you know what? Instead of dreading this and mourning the loss of summer, let me welcome the darkness, the coolness, the slow time of winter. I think that's the first place to start, and I think making a strategy going into the season and understanding the mechanics, I think helps, because it's not just optimistically power through it. Change your mindset and suck it up. It's not that. It's like that. It starts with that. Okay, I'm going to go into this differently, but let's make a strategy. So I think this is where understanding the mechanism, the high level mechanism of the healing and repair is so important, because it makes you go oh, this is an opportunity. And I'm going to set myself up to embrace that. So high level, and I'm sure we'll get into details, what I will say is that we all talk about vitamin D and the importance of that in health. And we know that that comes through the UV of summer. What I didn't know until I studied quantum biology deeper is that melatonin is the beautiful gift of hormone that actually takes the place of vitamin D in the winter. So we don't have to fear that we're losing the vitamin D if we've stored it up enough in the summer and we've embraced summer and we've allowed our skin to receive that light. Melatonin comes in and goes, cool, it's winter, it's dark. Now let me take over and do repair. And we think of it as a sleep hormone. I think we touched on it a little bit in the last episode, but it's a massive hormone of repair. And so the cold, when you really embrace the cold and the dark and the shift in rhythm, and you allow cold, this is the key we're going to talk about. You have to allow cold. And I'm sitting outside right now and it is chilly. If we can release the need to be the same warm temperature all year round, and we can start to enjoy and embrace the cold, when you allow the cold, that boosts the melatonin and allows it to start really coming in to reset hormones, repair things, like get us ready for the release of spring, for the growth, for the vibrancy. It's doing the kind of behind the scenes work. So embracing cold, embracing dark, protecting your light environment, which we can talk in details, and then embracing the seasonal foods that go with it. And it's like you're set up for success, and if you have that plan going in, like, okay, how am I do still need to engage and be outside. I can't use this as a time to like, just like barricade myself inside. Come up with strategies, and then you'll go into the season better and you'll have more support. So I would say that's high level. And then I think we can probably dive into details.
Totally. Tiffany, you know what? This morning, it's 18 degrees in Iowa, and I went on a walk and I bundled up and I carried a coffee, and my whole goal was to try to be outside for 20 minutes. So I walked a mile, and I like in this time I like to pray and walk and just kind of like breathe. Because with being cold, what happens instantly is your shoulders go up and you get really tense, you know? And I have this like terrible nerve problem in my low back, mid back. And so my whole goal was relax the shoulders, breathe deep. And Teresa knows, because I just told you, that I'm like so on a mission to try to help increase like my HRV. And then Teresa's like, sorry, Jamie, that's probably not going to happen because you have 4 small children and you have a stressful life. But I am going to do some experiments because I have an Oura ring. So I'm checking. So anyway, with that, Tiffany. So I went on this walk. It's so cold, but it felt so good when I got back. And guess what? I wasn't cold the whole time. I just wasn't. Your body kind of starts to warm up, but I felt so refreshed. So tell us all of the benefits that come with just being outside in the cold. I mean, you talked about melatonin. What are some other benefits that we can think of that kind of makes us want to go outside even for 5 to 10 minutes when it's cold?
I love that. That's a great question. And you hit on it, a lot of it, which is actually just like nervous system regulation and your body kind of doing that. The way you were describing it, it's like your body just relaxed. There was like this exhale and this relaxing, because it's like we have to understand that while we are thinking of our whole selves in this modern life, the mitochondria, which are very ancient little organelles in our body, they don't understand. They don't understand our heaters and our screens and all this. They understand their role in the seasons, and they actually love the opportunity to adapt. They are meant to adapt. Like they're meant to trigger different actions during different seasons. And so when you go out in the cold, you're giving them an opportunity to do their job, to be resilient. They're like, oh, I know what to do. So they actually start to produce more light, more heat, which makes them stronger. Just like everything else, like, okay, if we talk about going to the gym, if you never gave yourself that stressor of building muscle, right? Or things like that, like we all know what's going to happen from that. Like that creates weakness, right? Like we want to give our body those hormetic stressors in order to adapt, get stronger, be more resilient. So that's what's happening. It's like your mitochondria blueprint is like, yay, I get to flex my muscle and adapt. And so this is where they really start to create that internal heat. I don't think most people know, I didn't know how much light our body makes. It makes light, it makes infrared heat. So when there's an absence of it externally, it's like, oh, I got to do it more internally, which then makes the mitochondria stronger. So this is, it's like we want that adaptability. I think also it's like there is literally just almost that. Now it is coming from signals, wavelengths, we're connecting to the earth when we're outside, but I think that's just innate. So you walking outside and, being out in the cold and allowing yourself that opportunity, it's that connection to the earth, to the wavelengths, to the good EMFs. We hear all this negative talk about EMFs, but we have to understand they're actually like really beneficial and powerful. It's the non-native ones that are getting all the bad rap, the artificially made ones. But the electromagnetic fields from the earth are giving us the electrons. They're restoring our power. They are our battery pack. It's like plugging in your cell phone. So if you don't go outside, if you're not connecting to that, your battery's draining and you're not recharging it. So that's the other thing, is like we allow ourselves. And the third thing is that allowing yourself to get cold, actually, in terms of like thermogenesis, it's great for fat burning, for, like just sort of that internal heat building. It's funny you say that about the tense shoulders, because it's reminding me of a story really quick. The first time I did proper cold plunging, now I'd been doing cold showers for years. I was like, I got this. I decided to go on a Wim Hof excursion to Spain in the mountains. And I was like, yeah, I've done cold showers. Totally, that's the same as cold plunging. And I dragged a friend along with me who hates being cold. I was like, do you want to go on this thing? She was like, yeah, totally. I hate being cold. Let's do it. I was like, yeah, let's make sense. And they told us, and they were talking to us about the breath and kind of the body's response to the cold. And I was like, I'm a yogi. I've been breathing for decades. I've got this. I'm going to be calm. I know how to breathe, a lot about breathing. And they prepared the ice bath and they were like, right, okay, 10 minutes, in you go. And I was like, 10 minutes. Wow, we're not messing around. And my body panicked, absolutely panicked. I mean, that constriction, what you're saying, the shoulders, the tightness, like I stopped breathing when we got in the ice. And, we had great guides, and somebody said to me, just exhale. Because I couldn't get a breath in. And they said, just exhale. So all I did was exhale. And then the breath came naturally, right? Where I'm going with this is when I calmed, allowed myself and relaxed into it, the body miraculously and amazingly stepped up to the challenge. The amount of, one, calm, and two, heat that formed in my body, I can still feel to this day, years later. Like, it was so visceral. Like, it's like a fire got lit inside of me, and I was completely relaxed and calm for those 10 minutes. So, we have these natural mechanisms. We just often don't allow them to turn on.
Yeah, there's such ancient wisdom in this. And I know, like, what we've created is a society for humans that is all about comfort. And so in that, which was not how we were evolutionary probably designed, right? We weren't built for comfort in the way that we've created our world now. And so I think naturally, like you said, we would have had these experiences that created strength and resilience by just the way that we lived on the earth. And we don't have that. We were like now purposefully having to jump into ice water in order to get our bodies to be resilient in a way that they would have naturally been more resilient just because of the way we had to live. I had a similar experience. I actually, during college, went on a soccer trip and went way up into northern United States. And I think it was Lake Superior. I got in the winter. And I remember I couldn't breathe. And like once I let it out, I think a scream came out. Like I had to scream. It was almost like something had to come out of me. And I just remember I'll never forget that experience. I definitely didn't stay in 10 minutes. And it probably is something where you probably should work yourself up a little bit. Just like, so this makes me think of weightlifting. Like, again, how do we build muscle? We have to give a stimulus to the muscle. In a sense, we have to create injury, micro injury to some degree, for the muscle to know it needs to build upon that micro injury to create more strength. And this you could probably say on every level hormonally in our body. And that's how it kind of has to work a little bit. There has to be a little pain for the gain, or a big pain for a bigger gain, right? So it's like building that muscle from a circadian rhythm level. So along with that, then I guess you can go any direction you want to go, but you did mention seasonal eating, which I think isn't talked about that much. But I think, again, from the way we were designed, we didn't have every fruit and vegetable available to us all the time in grocery stores. So there was a seasonal way to eat. And what is the benefit of that? How do you live that out?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought us to that, because this is key. And I think this helps with where we started, which is the feeling of the season, the sort of depression that we can get in. So one One key thing to understand, I'm going to back up a little bit, but I'll talk about how it relates specifically to seasons, which is that the food that we're eating, we have to think of everything as information. Everything that goes into your body is carrying a code of information, whether that is natural or synthetic. There's information and frequency being carried in from supplements, from food, from anything that goes in our body. So we sometimes tend to think about food just as macronutrients, micronutrients, but it's actually information and frequency and code. So when we establish that context, then what becomes relevant is understanding that let's talk about real food grown in the earth. I'm gonna talk about like fake food because I think can naturally understand that like our body doesn't understand that language anyways. Let's talk about real food and what's grown in the ground. That's carrying light codes from where it's grown and when it's grown. So I'm going to plant that seed. Now you're living in a place, an environment, a season where your eyes are taking in the wavelengths of where you are. The wavelengths coming into your eyes, we receive information that's not just vision. You know, we have non-visual photoreceptors in our eyes. Those are documenting, they know where you are in the world and when it is. Now, those codes ideally need to match the food codes because your gut biome prepares itself and changes based on the frequency it's taking in from the eyes. It knows what foods it should be prepared to digest. Our gut biome doesn't stay static throughout the day or throughout the year. So if we're giving it information like, depending on where you live, but let's say, you know, like where a lot of us live, where it gets, you know, cold, that obviously this, let's just say like this doesn't apply at the equator where things are just like constant all the time. But we're talking about where people like have, you know, change of seasons. If let's say it's the middle of winter and I live, you know, in the Northeast, and then I eat a blueberry, my gut, now I'm not saying I love blueberries. I'm not picking on blueberries. They're my favorite thing, but my gut doesn't understand that. I am not going to digest and utilize the blueberry the same way in the winter as I would in the summer if I ate it seasonally and locally. Your gut biome is prepared differently for those. It understands that's the time. Summer is the time for those carbs, for the sugar. Your body's in a whole different mindset. Winter is, you know, if we think about hibernation, it's like fats, it's root vegetables. It's your gut biome understands that. It understands it doesn't have vitamin D. It understands it's using melatonin. It understands cold and dark, and it wants the foods that match that. So this is actually then also how it plays into our moods, because we know, you guys know, I'm sure all your listeners know, our gut is affecting our moods. Of course it is. The gut biome, the foods we eat, they're all connected. When you can honor and just make it easier for your body to understand the codes you're giving it, like, oh, I understand this potato, you know, and these fats because this is the season, versus like, what is this banana? I don't know what this is. You know, and it's like, it's so fascinating to me when I learned this and when I started to, I'll be honest that this was my last holdout. I had a very difficult time because I just liked what I liked and I liked eating the things that I liked all year round because they worked. And when I reluctantly finally started shifting with the season, not only did my gut heal, my sleep improved, my energy improved, my mood improved, but also I will tell you that I've gotten way more excited about different foods too, because it's like, ooh, like, yay, it's root vegetable time, it's stews, it's, you know, it's heavy, like warming foods, you know, and I'm honoring that. And then in the summer, I have permission to like dive my head into a giant bowl of fruit all day long because that's what's available. And I don't have to worry about calories and carbs and sugars and, you know, the things. It's like, it just also gives you permission to just enjoy the foods, get excited about them. Like there's something about that your body starts to just like appreciate and relax around.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can't wait to ask you more, but I am going to take a quick break and give a shout out to our sponsors. We have three sponsors, and we're so excited because, again, they align perfectly with our mission to empower women to understand their hormones. Wonder Cow is one of these mission-oriented businesses. It's colostrum, and Teresa and I both put colostrum in our water. We drink our colostrum daily. It's like liquid gold and it's so good for our gut health. So visit wondercow.com for 30% off of a subscription or 15% off of your first order with code Hormone Genius. Again, if your immune system's down like mine was, and if you struggle with gut health, again, these are two things among many benefits where you can include colostrum in your everyday life. Second is We Heart Nutrition. You guys hear us talk about this every episode, but we love We Heart Nutrition. If you're looking for bioidentical, or not bioidentical, bioavailable supplements and whole foods ground up in these amazing capsules, please visit We Heart Nutrition and type Genius for 20% off of your first order. And then lastly, Tiny Health. Again, all this will be in the show notes. You'll get $50 off of your Tiny Health Gut Kit. We were just talking about gut health. We're talking about seasons. So if you're struggling with mood, if you're struggling with digestion, or just things you can't get over, please check your gut. There's so much our gut health can tell us about the state of our health and well-being. So again, $50 off. Hormone Genius at checkout is the code. Okay, Tiffany, here we go. So we're talking about all these beautiful ways that we can eat along with the seasons. Okay, but instantly I'm thinking about maybe many of the people who create a lot of rules around food. They create around a lot of rules, and maybe you were one of them. You just said like, you like what you like, and this was the hardest thing for you to kind of come to. So for the people who they're more carnivore, maybe they're eating more winter but year round, or they're more vegan and they're eating more summer year round. What are some and again, people are going to eat what they eat. Of course, we all have the free will to eat what we want. But what are some kind of areas of knowledge or things to consider when eating in a very specific kind of way?
Yeah. I mean, exactly as you said, I'm never somebody who I'm not an always or never black and white. There's always that middle path. And I think that everybody has to start with where they're at and start comfortably and start slowly. And so I would never tell somebody, if they have a way of eating that has made them feel that they're thriving and they love it. I do feel that one thing I would invite people is to honestly check in with, are they consistently always feeling well? I think that's the thing to think about is the first step is always just tuning in. Do you actually notice that you feel the same level of energy, thriving, radiance year round? That would be the first place to start. Like, if I'm being really honest, does this diet, continue? Am I feeling the same consistently? And if you do notice that actually no, that's maybe your first check of like, maybe I try to tweak this a little bit. And then I think there's just simple ways. It's like, you don't have to change your whole diet structure, but maybe just allow yourself one little piece of wiggle room. Like if, you gave the example of like carnivore, people eat mostly carnivore. Okay, great. But like, how would it feel to just add in the winter, maybe like a little bit of root vegetable? Try it. It's like all of this has to come back to our own. We should never give our power away. Like everything is about our own personal sovereignty, right? Just because somebody else says, even because I say, try it for yourself. Like if it, just see, like you have to be really in tune with how you feel. And I don't think completely ditching what you've been doing and completely going in another direction is ever a good idea. I think small little changes are the way to experiment with it, but allow yourself, like I think here's where I'm at in the season of life is way more permission and way less dogma. I'm just like, actually, I'm exhausted from that. The rules, the dogma, they served a purpose at some point and I'm over it and I'm a little bit more in flow and I have never been happier and I've never felt better. So I think some of this is around just permission to experiment a little bit. Try it, see how it feels to add a little bit of a different food, see how it feels to, switch it up a little bit. So that's where I would say around food. I would always say, actually, though, the first place to start that we could take the diet part off the table is start with light and outdoor rhythm. Like, this is kind of the universal that no matter what your diet is, anybody can do this, which is allowing yourself to be cold. Like, turn the temperature down in the house a little bit. That's a place to start, a little bit at a time. Wear less layered clothing outside. Obviously be safe, in the elements, like you're talking about 18 degrees. You don't want to go out in a t-shirt. I think eventually there are people who would argue that you could build that adaptability, but like that's not the place to start, like to go be crazy. It's just like ditch all the winter coats, but maybe wear a lighter one, maybe, and then you kind of graduate to like vests or at least short bursts of periods of time of exposure safely, and you work your way up. Same as I would tell people in the summer in the sun, small gradual bits of exposure, not like all out, go right out in the middle of noon, and burn yourself. That's not wise. So we want to do the same in winter. So I say start with the cold exposure, adapting your body, allowing yourself to be outside more. And then really, really protecting yourself from the indoor artificial lights, especially in the winter, because there's naturally so much less light outside and we want to mimic that. And we want to allow those darker periods. And I think we talked about this in the last episode, but protecting the morning, especially, like allowing the sunrise to be the first light that your eyes see. And then after sunset, and we have devices, we have like, because we live modern lives, we do have to rely on some, devices like really good blue blocking glasses, the red tinted ones for, those times of days. And then just allowing a little bit more of the nervous system rhythm. And I think, just kind of like the downtime, the reset, the allowing it to be more of a hibernation season versus amped up, everybody gets into January like, whoa, full on. And it's like, actually, hold on. We're still in winter, save that energy for spring, let your body still repair. So I think we could and then with those diets, the last thing I would say is that maybe the place to start is not necessarily switching the actual foods, but maybe it's like, if you're a salad person, maybe try to just make more warmer, more rooted, use the same stuff, but like make that a warmer dish instead. There's little ways. You don't have to, it's not all or nothing.
Yeah, it's so true. Like even doing a podcast like this, you kind of feel like there's a temptation for people to listen to an episode like this and be like, oh my gosh, I've got to do all these things and like right now and like change my whole life. And I love that you said that there isn't a dogma to this. It is, I always say to my patients, like, I want you to feel called to whatever change you're going to make, whether it be a lifestyle change or a nutrition change, because if you don't believe in it, if you don't feel called to it, then why are you doing it? And also, when you do something, always still listen to your own body. Like if it's not working for you, then you need to listen to yourself. Nobody else can tell you. Somebody asked me about, the Fast Like a Girl book and like, what do I need to do? This exact protocol. And I'm like, well, if you want to, if you feel called to it, but you don't have to. The principles of fasting are ancient. Like fasting, there's so many ways you can fast. So like, don't ever think there's just one way to do anything. So I think that's very intuitive and very true. I think we can bring it a little bit around to hormones again, Tiffany, and the seasons, because we have a cycle. And so I think women naturally and intuitively kind of live in a cycle, right? And so we have an episode we're probably releasing about the menstrual cycle related to seasons here coming up. But let's go with that, like hormones and maybe even a touch of the adrenal system, because this has to do with stress. And we're talking about stress in a positive way, actually. Right now, we're talking about how stress actually provides resilience and growth to our hormones. But I think a lot of people feel stressed in a negative way and don't feel they know how to get out of a kind of an adrenal kind of what they think is fatigue or a crisis in that area. So in relationship to the cycle and women and that type of stress, how can we help women, again, just with some good tips for really balancing?
Well, I think again, so since we are talking about seasonally and we're talking about this, I'm going to focus on that first, which is that this is a natural time to allow yourself to go a little more inward and more quiet, and I mentioned at the beginning when we were chatting, I started writing and I've been called to creative writing for a long time and I've been resisting it for a lot of, all the chatter, the imposter syndrome, like, I'm not a writer. Who wants to listen to me? And finally, I just decided, like, well, I'm just going to do it. There's no, I'm not attached to an outcome. There's no agenda. I'm just sharing creatively this kind of mix of my, blend of science and spirituality and everything in between. But this has been a beautiful season to allow that because there's not so much going on outside, um, that we think of like when the seasons amp up, right? We get into spring and summer, and that just naturally calls you forward to be more busy. If you can allow yourself to use, again, this winter, um, light a candle, take a bath, write in that journal, do some reading, like give yourself permission to match what's going on outside. I think this is actually, if I had to say high picture, how we help women rebalance their hormones, it's like, it just starts with permission to like, we don't have to do and be in that aggressive pursuit energy. And that is the sort of narrative, right? It's like, and again, I have gone through it. Like, I am not talking about anything I have not done and lived. It's like those, I had these years of just pushing, striving, goal setting, never stopping, like go hard, go big or go home, like no days off, all those slogans. And I'm in this more energy of like flow, receiving, allowing. And it is not an easy shift. And I think, again, just like we were talking about with the other thing, my biggest advice for people is tiny micro changes. The smallest micro change done consistently is what builds the momentum. So, if you're somebody who's just like constant go, 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 which is not going to feed into hormonal reset and balance, right? Like this, another thing in this season with hormones is like insulin, if you allow winter to do its thing, insulin sensitivity will like increase by the time we get back to the season of fruits and vegetables that the insulin needs to be sensitive for. The dark time, the winter time helps to increase that sensitivity. It kind of resets everything. But on like this kind of permission-based narrative I was going on, which is that just do the one thing, take one thing off your plate and replace it with something that feels calming and nourishing. That might be writing, that, like I said, taking a bath, going for a walk, doing some deep breaths. You don't have to add hours of mindfulness meditation into your day.
I think about how, when we're calm and we're relaxed, our prefrontal cortex, our reasoning brain, like it's online. It's not online so much when we're stressed and overwhelmed all the time. And so sometimes I think about when I'm in a relaxed state and maybe on a walk or whatever, and I come home after my walk and I talk to my husband and I might share like a thought that kind of just happens to come to mind. I didn't will it. Might be an inspiration or maybe someone to pray for, just a thought. And I'm like, golly, if I just didn't give myself that time, I wouldn't have had that thought. I think about that a lot, And so this encouragement, Tiffany, that you're giving to our listeners, just like choose a thing and give yourself permission and give yourself permission for space, like mentally. Because again, like how many of our inspired thoughts come to us when we're when we're stressed out? We can't always, get away from stress, but we can get away from stress 24/7. We can go in a dark room, and something I've been doing a lot lately because of my own I have some nerve pain and yada yada, is I just lay flat on my back on the floor. No cushions, there's not a bed, it's just hard floor, and I let the gravity kind of just bring everything not forcibly down, but just naturally kind of grounding, literally.
Yeah.
And I do that for at least 10 minutes a day. And I have an aura ring, which I feel like I've talked about in every episode. And it always puts me in the relaxed state, always just 10 minutes. And it says, "Good job. You just relaxed. You helped your readiness score for the day." And I always feel so good about it. So, mostly what I'm saying, Tiffany, is I totally agree. And I think it's what our listeners need for sure. It's just a reminder of how important it is for your body, mind, and soul to give your time, to give yourself space.
And this is something I had to learn the hard way because I tried to force that time by doing more things. That's what I mean. It was like performative. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but I was like, well, I have to set this much time for mindfulness journaling and this much time for meditation and this much time for and it was all really regimented in like a have tos. And I was just like, I just don't want to, I just want to walk. And then when I started doing that, it's like, and to your point, this is where the creativity flows, the thoughts, the ideas. We have to just give ourselves that quiet time to do that. And it is amazing. And this is what I'm starting to explore in the writing is putting words, because that feels really inspired, right? Like, where did that thought come from? We are connecting to the field of consciousness. That's why being outside helps, because we're connecting to that frequency, those electromagnetic fields where thoughts and ideas flow, in the ether. But you're being quiet enough to hear the signal. Your body's in resonance with that. And so what's happening right now is I'm experiencing that. And then I'm putting quantum biology lens and understanding to it. And these words everybody's talking about, resonance, coherence, like what's actually happening with these signals in our experience, and like how can we explain that? Because people like the science of it, and I do too. I'm a nerd for it. But there's also just the actual experience that you're having, and it's cool to understand, like, oh, because I'm quieting myself and giving myself space, I'm able to receive. I've eliminated the static. And you don't have to do more. You don't have to do anything. This is what I want people. I just want to be like, no, can we just all do less? We've gone through decades of doing more, and now is the time to do less. More productively, more qualitatively.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tiffany,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So before we hit record, I was sharing, Tiffany, with you that we did like a recap on favorite episodes. And, if our listeners have not listened to your first episode, just type in Tiffany Cagwin, Hormone Genius Podcast. Listen to the first episode. It's so, so good. And this is just it's a perfect first time that they're hearing you, Tiffany, but it's also a perfect second episode because I feel like it just tags along beautifully. With that, I can't believe we're coming to an end of this episode because time went by so quickly, but we talked about how we can kind of shift with the seasons. We can be cold in the winter. We can let ourselves be warm. We can think about foods that go along with the rhythm of the seasons and kind of, give ourselves permission to eat with the seasons, which I think is beautiful. And that's going to be a challenge for me the rest of this winter. But Tiffany, as we wrap up here, I like to invite all of our interviewees to answer this one question, and then Teresa will follow up with how people can follow you and learn more. But what do you wish every woman knew about her hormone genius?
I'm just going to recap it based on what we just said, which is that it has a rhythm. It just has a rhythm that wants to be honored. And when we make space for that and honor it, then it will conduct the orchestra beautifully.
That is beautiful. And our hormones, we often say, are a symphony too. So in order to conduct your orchestra beautifully and have your hormones play like a beautiful symphony, again, all of these things need to be in balance. And, I know for me, as you were talking too about sitting and receiving, for a lot of us, who are Christian, it's like, that's what we say all the time. It's like, you can't hear the voice of God. You can't hear the voice of your creator unless you actually make space for it, or you actually quiet yourself enough in your soul, in a sense, to be able to hear that inner voice. And for a lot of us, that is where we feel love. And I think whatever faith you have or whatever you aspire to in that, I think love is the human language we all understand, that there is a giving and a receiving back and forth in human relationship, but even in the relationship we have with our creation from a creator. And I think that all of us can really sit with that. And that's what you're inviting us to do today, Tiffany. So thank you. And also just let us know how people can get a hold of you and your, again, social media handles, whatever you want to tell our listeners.
Thank you. And that was such a beautiful thought that you just shared too. Thank you. I loved that. That was making me smile. That was making my heart light up. My website is my first and last name, TiffanyCagwin.com. People can see a little bit more about my work, and there's ways to schedule consults with me. I do free consultations with people. A lot of my work is shifting and evolving, expanding. I will say the way that I'm working with people is expanding. So I always encourage people, if they're curious, to just book the call with me, because we can talk through, like what I offer and how I can help. I'm leading my next retreat to Portugal this October, and it's a return to rhythm and nature retreat. So that's on the website as well. The other thing I want to point out is following me on social media is a really good place to connect at the moment, because through my Instagram at Tiff Cagwin is where the link to my Substack is, this new writing that I've launched. I don't have it up to date on my website yet. I haven't gotten to that technical part. I've just been in the creative process and letting it flow. But the link is on my Instagram, on my link tree, and you can find the link easily. So any of those ways, all of those ways, I'm easy to find, and I love to hear from people, and I love to connect. So please reach out.
Well, thank you again for being with us today on the Hormone Genius Podcast, and maybe we'll have you on again down the road soon.
Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel, so if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.